What's up, everybody? It's Kevin here from Happy Beard Games. And in today's video, it is a pickup style video. We have pickups from my recent purchases at Super Smash Games in Olympia, Washington, which is a really cool game store that I go to often. So there is pickups. There's also gameplay footage of those pickups and my thoughts and details about what those pickups are. But there's more to this video than just a simple pickups video and a gameplay video. In this video today that you're watching right now, we are going to be talking about why I picked these up and the reasoning behind my thoughts and choices, the decisions that I made at the actual game store when I'm buying these games. Because I've got a lot of NES games. Not the most in the world, but I've got over 100. I think I've got 100 now. No, I've got more than 100. I've got like 140. What am I talking about? I mean, I've sold a couple here and there, but yeah, I've got about 140 different NES games. That's not counting Famicom. And when you're up in that region of having 100 games for a console, you've got to think and consider and decide different things than you would for a console like, I don't know, something that I don't have very much of, like the Dreamcast. So on this video, we're going to talk about, and I've done this video before in a way with my previous pickups videos. I'm going to try not to keep it so long-winded this time. I'm going to try to keep it shorter, more condensed, to the point. And in this video, we're just going to talk about things that go through my mind when I'm buying a video game at the store. What am I looking for? Am I looking for a good price? Am I looking for a good type of game? Am I looking for something specific? What am I trying to do here when I'm at a game store shopping for retro games? Specifically on games, consoles, collections where I have a lot of them already. So let's jump in today on Hybrid Games' pickups and information about pickups, my decisions behind them today on Hybrid Games. Now, today's video games are all for the Nintendo NES console, the most classic of Nintendo consoles, the original home console made by Nintendo in North American regions is the Nintendo NES. The Nintendo NES is a game console that I didn't grow up with. I played it at friends' houses at the time when I was young. But by then, the Sega Genesis was out, and the Super Nintendo was out too. So I had a Super Nintendo. My friends either had a Genesis or an NES or Super Nintendo. Everybody I knew pretty much had some kind of console, or maybe just the Game Boy. But we all liked video games, so I do have history of playing it at an early age, but not a history of collecting it or owning it. It was always something that seemed kind of interesting to me because it has that toaster or oven style thing where you open up the door and slide the game in. And it was always interesting to me seeing something that I'm used to, like Genesis and Super Nintendo back then. It was always interesting to see games that had more limited graphics quality than the other ones. It didn't look like the Super Nintendo, and it didn't look like the Genesis. It didn't sound like them either. So it was an interesting way for me as a kid to see games that were older generation than my own. I mean, later on, shortly after I had the Super Nintendo, my stepdad had his Atari 2600, so I was playing that, but I didn't have the NES for a very long time. Not until I was in high school, actually, is when I got the NES. I was probably 16 when I got the NES. Somewhere between 16 and 18 was when I was either playing the NES or I got my first NES, and I got a few games for it. So that's my basic history of the NES and myself. So we've got 3 games today, and as you'll see in this video, it's not about the games. It's not about what games they are, it's about the message behind them. So the first game we've got is Jack Nicklaus, the greatest 18 holes of major championship golf. I'm trying to read the cover there. The next game is by Sunsoft. I had high hopes for this one. It's Xenophobe. Whoa. It looks like an Aliens movie. Look at that, you got a xenomorph on the front. And this is a game that's a classic arcade game by Midway. And I have it on the Midway Arcade Collection for the GameCube. So it's one of those games that I like to get the arcade game ports on the NES, like Rampage, Gauntlet. So I had to check this one out. And here's a game that I love the soundtrack for. I can't emphasize that enough. The soundtrack of this game is amazing. I think it's by Tim Follin. And here it is. Pictionary. It's an LJN game. But personally, I think it's one of the better LJN games. And I don't even think LJN games are really that bad. I get the AVGN joke and stuff about that. But I think this is a pretty cool game, Pictionary. And I'm actually pretty satisfied with my purchase. Out of all these three, this is the one that I like the most. Although I think I spent more time with Jack Nicklaus Golf because of how long it took. And this is actually a first for me, getting these plastic cases. They're retro. They are from the era. They are all Nintendo branded with Nintendo logos on the front. And these plastic cases are something that I used to see at like video rental stores for video games. And like Blockbuster had them. And some other like more local type of video rental stores, because there was a lot back then. People would always talk about Blockbuster and maybe Hollywood Video, but there was a lot of other rental stores back in the day for movies in the VHS and early DVD eras. And they came in these cases usually when you rent them, but these are more like for home, I think, because they just say Nintendo on them. They're not like a Blockbuster case. I used to have these for the Super Nintendo and the N64, so I really wanted to get these with them. And that was part of the reason why I got 3 games. And I wanted to keep it kind of inexpensive. These were all $2 each for these cases, which is kind of a lot, but I really wanted the cases, and I didn't have any of them before. So for today's first pickup, we've got Pictionary for the NES. This is a game in a genre that I love on NES specifically. And this is by LJN, Pictionary. It's a Power Play series. It's got that classic LJN logo. Pictionary is a game that I picked up for a total of $9 at Super Smash Games Olympia. And this is a game that is, once again, is a genre that I love, which is game show games, or like, I guess you could say board game type games for the NES. These are games that I love to play in a digital virtual game format, even more so than the actual games. And when you play these games like Uno or Monopoly on like current consoles like Nintendo Switch, those are cool too. But for some reason, I like them being in this old school format. There's something about adapting a TV show like, like Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy, or other games on the NES like Anticipation, which is another one that I like. That's a board game style game, or game show type game too. There's something about adapting those to the 8-bit format of the NES, hardware limitations, the way it looks, the way it plays is different than what you're used to, but it's the same game. I love that with these classic game show type games. And that's why I picked up Pictionary. Not only that, but I've actually heard the soundtrack for this game many times on the internet, on YouTube, so I always listen to the soundtrack for this when I go to retro 8-bit chiptune type music. I go to Pictionary. I've never had this one. This is one I've been wanting for a very long time, and I just kind of wanted to come across it on my own in the wild. Now, speaking of how I decided and why I decided, my thoughts behind this game, why did I want to pick this up, is because of the genre. The type of game really matters to me. And sometimes on NES, it's hard to tell what games are what. Like, you don't know sometimes it's an RPG or an action game. You don't know. With Wizards and Warriors, what is a Wizards and Warriors? Is it an action game or an RPG? It's actually like a side-scrolling platformer with a fantasy element. But you can't really tell from the cover. I mean, maybe back in the day you had the box or the manual, but now when you're picking up games at a retro store, you don't always got that. But Pictionary is pretty self-explanatory. You pretty much know this isn't going to be an action game, right? There's no action in Pictionary. There's just solving drawings, right? Well, this one actually has some action in it. Basically, how you play this game is you play a mini-game. You collect tiles through the mini-game, which show more and more of the picture, the Pictionary picture. And then when the time runs out, or if you lose the mini-game, which makes it go by faster on the timer, then you have to guess what the picture may be. And sometimes I got it right, sometimes it was almost all the way there, and I still didn't understand what the heck that picture is supposed to be describing. So that's the basics of Pictionary. but with the timer, they added a mini-game element to it. And there's not too many mini-games. I feel like this should have had a more variety of mini-games included. But there's only like 5 different mini-games or something like that, maybe less. But once again, the soundtrack's amazing. It's pretty crazy hearing the soundtrack. The guy that did the soundtrack also did another game, Solstice, for the NES, which has an amazing soundtrack too. And a couple other games like Silver Surfer, which I don't have that one yet. So yeah, I really like these game show type games, and I kind of explained the reason why. They're just fun to play an adaptation of an actual board game or a game show in the NES format. The way you play it is fun. I don't think this one supports 4 players like Anticipation did, which is another good one. It's similar to this, but without the minigames. And yeah, this game also features a mode where you can play single player, a multiplayer, and there's a mode where you can play a more traditional Pictionary where you can draw things, and then you have your friends guess what they are. And then you can also just do a free draw, so you can practice your drawing skills. So the drawing is so hard to do. Just picture 8-bit games moving like in lines and trying to make a picture out of it. It's hard. I mean, on the Super Nintendo you have the mouse. This one you don't. So it's a little hard to do drawing with this. That's an understatement too. But yeah, this is a game that I recommend. It's an LJN game that I think is pretty great. I mean, the minigames aren't that fun. They're repetitive, but I still had a fun time playing this. I like this type of game on the NES. The next game is Xenophobe. Yeah. Now, Xenophobe is once again a remake or port of the classic Midway game. It features 2 players. They can play simultaneously on their own separate game screens, which is kind of cool and unique. So the screen is divided in half. The second player gets their own, basically their own game to run around in, while you're actually both, you can run into each other as well on the game screen. And I had a hard time playing this. I've never really figured it out when I was playing. You have to avoid enemies and race against the time to get off the space station or spaceship and evacuate before the aliens take over. It's very hard. A lot of the shots that you do, like with your gun, they don't do very much damage. Like, you can kill the xenomorphs, kind of, but it's hard. You can jump. It's really kind of clunky, McClunky, and I don't really like it that much. Does say Authentic Arcade Edition, split-screen action, 2-player interactive on the front cover. And I love the cover art, but the cover is not the same as the game. Now, the decisions that I made when going to play this game is basically, I like arcade ports on the NES, and that's something that I look for when I'm at a game store. I like to look for specific genres and then kind of keep my games, like get one from each genre when I go to find video games. Like, I'll get a shoot 'em up, I'll get an adventure game, and I'll get something like that, like an arcade port, you know, or a game show, game board type game, board game. And yeah, I like to keep like my genres like one of each for when I get a good variety of games. That's something you got to think about when you're buying games. Do you want a variety, or do you want a whole bunch of shoot 'em ups, or do you want a whole bunch of platformers? Is that like your shtick? You want platformers like Castlevania or Mega Man? I don't know, but for me, it's like I want something of each, so that when I buy these games and they're new to me for the first time, even though they're retro, I have a variety in case like I get burnt out on shoot 'em ups. I don't want to play any more Xevious. I don't want to play any more Galaga. I don't want to play any more anything like that. You know, Light Force. So with Xenophobe, it's like, okay, it's a classic arcade game. I have a few other classic arcade ports. There's Donkey Kong, Mario Bros, of course. There's also Pac-Man. There's Tetris, which you can kind of say is an arcade port. There's also games like Gauntlet, Rampage series games. There's a bunch of really cool arcade ports on the NES. That was one of the first genres that I ever collected for the NES. I went to, what was it? What's the name of that store? It's in Portland. There's like 5 of them in Portland. It's like Disc Replay or something like that. I can't remember the name of it, but I walked over there. I got a few games, but I really wanted to get Gauntlet for the NES. So when I had my first only NES, and I had to pick it up with the Advantage joystick controller because you gotta have that arcade authentic experience. I was going to ground control in Portland a lot back then, and I really wanted that experience at home, but I wanted it in the style, the authenticity of the 80s. So that's what I did. I got that, and I got the advanced controller, so I have a joystick. That was a long time ago. That was like 2010 or something. Yeah, so basically, I want arcade games. That's something that goes through my mind. I want an arcade port experience on the NES. So I'm looking for games, looking for variety once again. I want a game show game. I want an arcade game. That's what I was thinking at the time. I want an arcade port. And at the same time, I'm trying to keep my purchase under 30 bucks. Sometimes I'll trade in games, have some store credit. And also a cool thing, if you trade in games at Super Smash Games and you get cash back instead of store credit, they'll give you, I think, a 20% off discount if you're going to buy games there. So if you really want cash, which most of the time I'll go with the cash because I'll need it for something else, they'll give you a discount. Like I got a discount on the N64 transfer pack recently because I wanted cash for a bigger trade-in that I did. I could have gotten it all in store, but I don't want to spend everything in store at that moment. So anyways, this game was $10. The other game was $9. All the cases were $2 each. So it's adding up, and I know I want to get those cases too, for sure.
Nice shot.
Now with this game, Jack Nicklaus, I don't know how do you pronounce that, it's spelled a little differently. This is a game that's a sports game, more specifically a golf game. So it's not action-packed like basketball games that I actually personally really do like. A lot of the games that I have that are sports games are, I don't know if you count racing games as sports games. No, I don't think I would count that. But sports games, I do like basketball games a lot, and I like golf games a little bit less. Tennis games are kind of in the same category as golf. They're more action-y. Tennis is more action-y than golf because it's like the Pong style. But these golf games are a different kind of sports game. They're slower, more precise. You got to get the right timing. And they're just a slower paced game. Might be a different audience or crowd than your basketball or your hockey or your football, foosball, you know? That's the devil's sport. I don't like football. I don't get it. Oh, and you know what's even worse than football for me? Baseball. I don't buy baseball games. I mean, I think I've got one on the on the Atari over here, but still. Jack Nicklaus golf. Nicklaus? I don't know. I'm not familiar with the guy, but he doesn't have any eyebrows. And this guy has a golf game for the NES. Now, I have a few other golf games for the NES, so I had an idea of what this was going to be, because I know it's golf. And a lot of the golf games for the NES have a specific style. Even going all the way up to like the Switch with the most recent Mario Golf, there's a continuing theme of the gameplay for these games. And it's not really that much like actual golf. It's basically you have a meter on the side. You click A, it goes up. You click A, it goes down, and you kind of like, you match the 2 points, and that increases your strength of your swing. And I didn't really figure it out too well, but it does increase the strength of how far you're hitting it. You also have things to look out for, like the type of golf club you're actually using has different strengths. You want to use a putter for when you're on the putting part of the game. And then you want to use like a different, stronger one at the very start so you can hit it as far as you can. There's other things you got to look out for, like the wind. It's blowing in different directions, and there's also a strength meter for the wind, which I didn't know for like halfway through it, but there is. And yeah, you've also got like the ground is like different like levels of like how steep it is, you know? But it's also like you can't see that in the graphics. There's a meter, it replaces the wind meter, and that's how you know when you're hitting the ball into the hole when you're putting it. That's how you know where it's gonna like swerve into. You can kind of curve the ball too, but most of the time I didn't play around with that too much since I really needed to because of how the putting part sloped around and stuff. Now with Jack Nicklaus Golf, it's not as good in my opinion as like the traditional NES Golf, which I think was made by Iwata. And then it's not as good as the Mario Tournament Golf, NES Open Tournament Golf. So those are the ones I have too. And I think I have another one too. But this game, I don't think it's as good. Not only does it load very slowly, as you'll see in the video, It's kind of like this thing where like every single time you putt or you golf, swing the golf ball, it has to like readjust the graphics, and it's not a 3D game, but it has like this good detail of like it knows where it is on the course, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool how it does that, but you have to like load every little pixel in a line as it goes on. And I like the part where the trees pop in. That's always the favorite part. It's like, oh, we gonna play now, and the trees pop in. And I don't know, it's fun, but maybe I'm just too modern for this game. Maybe it's just too old school. I don't know. It's like I didn't like it, but I like the golf. I like the basic golf on NES, or the basics. Another thing that I think this is missing, it does show a mini-map when you first start the level, but there's no mini-map. And I like having that map so I can see where I am in like coordinates to the actual hole that you're going for. So the goal, I like to be able to see it on a mini-map, and this didn't have it as far as I could tell. It had it right before the level started, but not really. So Jack Nicklaus Golf by Konami, which I picked this up partially because it's a sports game, partially because it's a golf game, and partially because it's a Konami game. And I have a lot of Konami games on the NES. I got all the Castlevanias. I love the Castlevania games. And another reason that I bought this is the price, $3. Now, that might be a little bit overpriced, as most of the games are at Super Smash games. I'll be honest, they're a little overpriced. They're not cheap. They're modern, like, prices. But you don't have to pay shipping, so it's okay. So it's not as bad as, like, eBay sometimes. But yeah, it's $3. You know, it's not, like, the best game ever. It's not the worst game ever. It's not my favorite golf game, but I didn't know that when I bought it. So $3. And I got the case, too. So it totaled to about $30, I think. Anyways, going back to deciding what I had to pick up for when I was going through my head when I was deciding this was I want a sports game today. I don't always want a sports game. I don't even like sports games. I'm not a big sports guy. I like some sports. I almost got a skateboarding game because that sounded cool, but I wanted to keep it under $30. So I picked up a golf game. Even though I already have a couple golf games, I had heard of this one before. I thought of it might have been better than it was. It was okay. I did play all 18 holes, all 18 courses, and it was okay. It was okay. I don't know if I'm going to be going back to this one anytime soon, but it was alright. It was alright. Not my favorite golf game, but it was alright. Alright, everybody, that's it for today's pickups video. To wrap things up before we actually close the video, this pickups video is not just the pickups and gameplay, but actually the reasons, the decisions that went behind in my mind as I'm going through the game store looking for games. Now, these were games that were not in the glass case. These are not too expensive games. They're under $10 each, or around $10 each for maximum price. And these are games that are on like a shelf. They're loose. You can just pick them up and grab them, look through them. Which I like that. I understand why they keep them in the case, because they're more expensive and they don't want people like messing with them or maybe stealing them or something. That makes sense. I understand that, but I like being able to go through, flip the games. Like, you know when you go to a record store and you go and you flip through the albums? I used to be a big collector of vinyl and even CDs, but I don't buy them that much anymore. So I like that experience of flipping through used, you know, nostalgic, retro things, and trying to find not only a good deal, but deciding what to spend my precious money on. Because some of these games, like, I've got a lot of these games of that type. I don't have a lot of this type. Well, maybe I just feel like playing that type recently. And yeah, that's something that you gotta look forward to and think about when you're playing these games. I know it sounds pretty basic, everybody goes through this, but some people just buy like a specific game. They go to a store, hey, do you have Fire Emblem? Hey, do you have Metroid? You know, stuff like that. Do you have Aladdin? You know? And I hear that a lot when I'm there. Like, people that aren't really, like, gamers, you know, like their parents, kids' parents, or like someone that, you know, they haven't played games in a while. Maybe they want to pick something up from their childhood, but they're not really like a retro gamer or a collector. But they do want to play like an older game, and once in a while, they'll go find a specific game. But for me, when I've got like 100 games plus, it's like I really gotta think some more about what I want to buy, and maybe how or when I want to buy it too, and what genre of the game. Do I like that genre? Like with Pictionary, that was a little bit of gamble with all these because I haven't played them all yet. I haven't played any of them yet, except for Xenophobe. I played that on the collection of the actual arcade ones. And now these games are all kind of mediocre, common games, but they're still fun to have and fun to play in the year 2022. And I think that my pickups were pretty fun. The prices were reasonable, and the decisions that I made behind them are more interesting in ways than the actual games themselves, seeing gameplay, or just me being like, yo, I picked up these games and that's it. But yeah, I think deciding and thinking about what you have to do when you're buying these games is important to think about and important to talk about when you do these games. That's why I've done a video like this before with some past games where I think I got like a couple other board games. I don't remember what they were, but I did a video of this earlier this year. So this is pretty much the same type of thing, but with different games and a little bit different things to talk about. Alright everybody, thank you for watching today's Happy Beard Games video. If you like this video, please be sure to leave a like. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Really, anything, just what do you think about this video? Is it too repetitive? Are the games bad? Are the games good? Is it more original? I don't know. Subscribe today for more classic gaming goodness. You can check me out on my Linktree page. You can find all my other websites on there. And then share it with your friends. You can also donate on my Ko-fi page, and there's more information on that on the Ko-fi page too. Alright everybody, thanks for watching today's Happy Beard Games. Once again, stay tuned for more classic gaming goodness right here on Happy Beard Games. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye!